Building a QuickBooks-style database in Excel, this time constructing a standardized 12-note color system. So get ready and some coffee because we're about to excel at automating Excel. Here we are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay because we basically built this from a blank worksheet, but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just construct the part of the table that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook though, 4 tabs down below: example, accounting, practice, blank, example, in essence, the answer key, the cheat sheet. The accounting tab is going to have the analogous accounting system that we will be modeling our table off of. The practice tab has pre-formatted cells, so you could practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay. We will continue to work in the blank tab where we started with a blank worksheet, continuing in essence in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills, database skills, but our Excel formatting skills as well. So we're doing an analogy of our accounting system, an advanced DAW or database system, and using a traditional accounting layout both in Excel as well as in QuickBooks in order to visualize the system that we're putting together. So thus far, we have put together the notes in the musical alphabet. And we're going to start at A for our notes because that's going to be, the traditional starting point. If we number them, we'll have them as 1, even though a lot of times the piano starts at C. That's one of the things that we have to kind of work around. And we saw a complexity with that when we started to look at the octaves. Now, these notes are analogous to our accounting system of the accounts. Then we added our numbering system, which was analogous to our accounting system of account numbers. And then we added our octave situation. That's where we ran into the problem of the C being the starting point oftentimes of an octave notation. And that is going to be analogous to our table for the departments, which wasn't perfect analogy, but we talked about that. And now what we want to do is think about a coloring system, which in QuickBooks, they don't really have a default coloring system. I would suggest it would be something worthwhile to do. And I would suggest it would look something like this. We can have a default type coloring system saying that the basic accounts would have a color that we can turn on and off. So assets green, liabilities blue, equity that red or whatever, pink, and then the revenue is orange, and the expenses yellow. If we did that, the trial balance could look something like this. Now that might look awfully gaudy and awfully, kind of bright, but you should be able to toggle this on and off with the help and use of conditional formatting. In other words, once I pull this over into the actual trial balance, then I could grab any of these numbers, and as I change reports, because we use conditional formatting, it will then change the formatting over here. Okay, so that's going to be the idea. Now, if I was in QuickBooks, then I feel like that would also still be something worthwhile to do, because if I used something like a trial balance, wouldn't it be nice if within QuickBooks they had something within this menu or even this menu where I can toggle on a color system that would basically look like this. And then I can easily see where the revenue side of the trial balance starts. See? So right down here, I have to look for it in debits and credits and say, okay, here's the revenue side. Here's like the income statement. Even on the standard reports of the balance sheet and income statement, if we had a layout of accounts that I can toggle on and off, then that could be a standardized set of colors that would make it very easy for me to pinpoint where I'm going visually. And so that's going to be the argument. Now, note that in QuickBooks, we can do it by account, which I had the very simple version, meaning assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expense. The more detailed version would be by account type, meaning like the checking account has a different account type that's a bank account type in QuickBooks than the accounts payable, and then the other current assets, fixed assets, accounts payable. Here, the other one was accounts receivable, other current liabilities, and so on. So that's what I would think QuickBooks will do at some point in time. The thing that I think stops people from doing that is not the difficulty of having a toggle on and off of the color, but one, there's kind of this idea that you don't need color in a sophisticated accounting program. They might think of it as like childish. When I started working, that was maybe the thought process, but color is actually quite helpful just to quickly visualize something. And the other thing is that people will argue on the colors. So you might say, where did I come up with this kind of color system? And that could be another, issue. So how would I address that if I was in charge of it? If I'm doing the same analogy over here in my music system, I would argue for the same thing. Music is more likely, because it's more artsy, to be okay with color. But again, you're going to have all these arguments on what is the color system that would be best for naming the colors. Also, in music, similar to we have the color system that would lay out for the chart of accounts. This chart of accounts would be like all of the accounts, but we also are going to have accounts that are in a collection, which is going to be a relative reference. If I go over to the example tab, those are going to be this numbering system we will do later, where it has Ionian is going to be 1. I'm going to call this Ionian Ocean, Ionian Sharp 1.5. Dorian will be 2. Phrygian will be 3. Lydian 4. Mixolydian 5, and so on, so that this will be a relative perspective. So then I would also want a color system for this relative perspective, which might be analogous on our accounting system to a colored system for the basic accounts, assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expense, versus a color system for like all of the account types, which would be like having a color system fixed for all of the notes in the musical alphabet. Now, in music, this fixed color system here, that's going to be relative to the 12-note collection, as we'll talk about later, is probably more useful, because that will be the same for each collection of notes, allowing us to visualize things color by color. But it also could be useful to visualize things as having the 12 notes as a fixed color. So no matter what collection or perspective we're looking at, then A is always red, B is always yellow, and so on and so forth. Now, there's another component here, which is octaves, that we could have a different color system for octaves. And in that system, we might use brightness in order to add the dimension of octaves, which we might talk about later as well, which would be similar to in the accounting system for departments. If I had different departments, then maybe I can color code those with a different shade, or meaning brightness. It gets lighter or brighter, darker or lighter. But when you mess with dark and lightness, like if you make something dark, then the text has to be white. You're going to have to change the text from black to white if it's on a dark background, which isn't impossible to do. It's not too difficult, but it does add a significant, difference. Okay, so if I go back on over here, then let's go back to the example tab and think about this. These are the colors that we're going to choose. Where did I come up with those colors? So a quick recap of the color system. So this is what I would argue for making a color system. What is a color? Color is just basically a line based on wavelengths. So you can think of it vertically here as though it's just a line, right? But then you could make that into a wheel, and the way you do that is possibly using like logarithms or whatever to convert the linear thing into a circle. So now it has 360 degrees. So one way that I can define color is by the 360 degrees. The standard color wheel that we came up with This isn't all the colors. You can have like a much more detailed kind of color wheel, like with 360 different colors, although many of them are going to be quite close to each other. So you want to space them as far apart, right? And then the end of the color wheel, like around here, I think they kind of fudged the numbers because they want the endpoint to go back around in a wheel. So the color wheel that we use is taking the linear strip, bending it into a wheel, which you can imagine basically having 360 degrees, 360 colors, therefore, you would think, although many of them are going to be very close together, and then fudging the endpoints together so it blends back into itself. Okay, so you can look on your favorite AI like a chat or Grok, and say, give me the color wheel and give me the numbering system for a 360 color wheel. However, Excel doesn't use those color systems generally. It uses these hex numbers. The hex numbers have encoded in it not only the hue or the color itself, but it also has the brightness encoded. Therefore, when I look at the color system in here, you have this kind of wheel, but that's not exactly a wheel, but it's got all the shades in it. And then you've got this thing, which is a square, right? And you can see that's changing the hex number down here. So you end up with this massive table because now they've put into play multiple different things, which is going to be, color as well as brightness and so on. Okay, all that to say that what I would suggest to have the biggest distance is to have the brightness kind of the same, meaning maximum brightness, so that I can use black letters, and then map it onto 360 degrees, and then try to get as much distance on the circle as you can through the 360 degrees, right? That's basically what I did here. So I won't show you all that. I have that in a different course. But that's basically where I'm coming up with these numbers. Now, some of them are still close. Like this, if your eye's not good at color, then this green and that green might look pretty close. But this is basically as much distance as I can get without, as far as if I did it right, without basically resorting to other things other than just hue color, meaning brightness and whatnot. So then that preserves brightness for things like octave level and stuff. Okay. So that's where I come. That's would be my argument, both on the accounting side and in a music system, that should be the color. Why? Because I can also, particularly on music, I could map in one octave, these notes, onto a 360 degree wheel as well. And then imagine these 12 points are the maximum distance points between the 360 degree wheel. So that means you can kind of map on the 360 colors to this 360 octave wheel. So that kind of makes sense, right? From an argument, right? So, and then I have A as red, and then that happens to land on this green being C, which might be the most common key that people play in. Okay. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and say, how can I logistically do this? Let's first just list out the colors in here. So I'm gonna put the colors. Let's put the colors right here. I'm going to select the B column, right click and insert. I don't want copied cells. I'm going to go over here and then right click and insert. And then I'm going to go where this C starts where this A starts. That's fine. And then I'm just going to copy and paste them in here, right click and paste them. So these are the colors. Now, if you don't have this sheet, then you can basically type in these colors if you so choose, or you have the cheat sheet, you can grab them from the cheat sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these colors and do the tedious process of making this cell that color so we can see what the color is. And then we're going to use conditional formatting to make each of these letters become that color if there's an A, allowing us then to use this format painter to apply to any cell, and if it contains that letter, it'll turn into that color. So these conditional formattings aren't the best thing that Excel has. They're not as optimal as they could be. They're more optimal in database programs, I believe, but they work pretty good. And there's still some nuances with, applying the color that apply out. So I'll do the tedious work of applying all this out. So I'm going to copy this hex number. And by the way, if you want to come up with these numbers, again, use AI and say, I want the maximum distance with the maximum brightness or something, and give me the hex numbers for that. It's not perfect. You'll have to check it because sometimes it gets a little wonky, but there it is. So I'm going to go to the Home tab. I'm going to go to the bucket. Now, this time I'm going to go to the bucket. Next time, I'm going to go to the conditional formatting. Right now, I don't want conditional formatting. I just want to make it of that color. So I'm going to hit that color and put that in the hex right there. Boom. If that was too fast, I'll do it again. So I'm going to double click in here, copy that. And then I'm going to go on that cell, Home tab, font group, drop down, more colors. I'm going to bring it on over to the custom. And then here's the hex number. So I'm just going to paste in the hex number FF8000. Okay. Repeating the process. I'm going to do this all the way down and dropping it down. Custom hex number, boom. And then I'll grab this one, copy, drop it down. Now, is there an easier way to do this? You would think, right? You would think that if I had the hex number, I could say apply the color based on that hex number or something. But the color engine in Excel is not like as good as you would think it would be. I don't know what, there must be some kind of programming limitations, because Excel is so darn good at everything that it's kind of amazing that the color thing is just not, but maybe, I don't know. It takes a lot of memory to do color, I guess, or something. So we'll just work with what we got. And so I'll hit the drop down and go custom, boom, boom. And so some of these you might say, well, I should also change the font to be white, or maybe we should have made it a little bit brighter as the default. I wanted to keep the brightness at like 50 because when I was doing this, I was like, I want to use the octave. I want to preserve the brightness for octave levels, but maybe that's not a concern. It might be, so if this is too dark, you either offset with white on it, right? Like this, which is kind of a pain, but you can put that in the conditional formatting, or you lighten up all of the colors uniformly is what I would argue to do. And like, do these colors mean anything? It looks like a rainbow or something. No, I just spaced out. So that, get ready for that argument and just say, no, they're just standardized colors based on the color wheel that, okay, so that's going to be the standardized colors. Now, I could repeat the process going down here, or once again, if I wanted to get detailed, I could change the brightness and put this in the middle zone and change the brightness as I go up and back. But I'm not going to get that detailed. What I want to do now is I'm going to go over here and I want to apply conditional formatting to say if there's an A in the cell, make that red. Now, it's going to get a little bit wonky because notice I represented A sharp or B flat as a lowercase ab. One of the wonky things with the conditional formatting is it doesn't recognize capital letters. So if the other thing I want to do is use the contains field, because I want to apply this later on to things that have multiple things, like cells that have multiple things in it, meaning I might want to have a cell that's represented by an A, and then maybe it's also got a 6 in it because the 6 is representing something different, such as the Aeolian node, meaning, and we'll talk about that later, but if there's 6 Nashville numbers 6, or the Aeolian node is the 6. That means if I say it's equal to A, it won't pick it up if it has a 6. So I want to have it contain the A. But if I just say it contains the A, then this one also contains an A and it can't distinguish capitals, so that's a problem. However, that problem is kind of fixed because it's in, it's going to be in order. So one way to kind of fix that is it's going to be basically in order. So this AB is after that one. Therefore, if it has, so in other words, if it has just an A, if it's ordered properly, it'll be red. And if it has an A, B, an A and a B in that order, then I want that rule to take precedent over the straight, just the A rule. So then that one. So even though two rules are met, it's going to take the second rule, right? Okay. So that means I have to highlight all 12 here. And then I'm going to go into the conditional formatting. This time, home tab, style, conditional form. Wait, I have to copy this. Let's copy this. Then select all these. Then home tab, style, conditional formatting. I want to go to not equal, but contains. Text that contains. And then as long as it contains an A. Notice, again, these three contain an A. That's okay, because once I go to the next one, then if it has just an A, it'll be this. If it has an A and a B, then it'll be something different, right? So, but now I want to go to the drop down, custom. I want to make it then on the fill section, more colors. And this is where it gets really tedious. Custom, and then there's the hex number. So there it is. Okay, now it's red. Okay, okay. So now they're all red. So now I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to make sure I get just that, all 12 of them. Home tab, style, drop down. I want to make it contain this one. So notice the first one is still red, even though this one has an A in it. So this one, and now this one has an A and a G, but the A and the G is going to be after, the A, or the G and the A is going to be after this one. So I'm going to say this one, boom, boom, boom. There's the hex, paste, bam, bam. Okay. So now this A6, if I grab this, home tab, clipboard, format paint, put it on that A6, there it's an A. If I make this an AB7 or whatever, the 7 doesn't mess it up. It's still going to be orange. Okay. So then let's remove that conditional formatting, which I could just grab a cell over here and go boom, remove it. Okay, let's do that all the way down. Yellow, I select all of them. Make sure to select all of them. It needs to be applied to all the cells so that all cells have all 12 conditional formatting. And then we'll say boom. If it has a B, hit the drop down. Now the B, this is interesting, is going to the B is messing up the AB because it's after it. So I'm going to hit the, so how can I fix that? Hold on a second. This is getting messed up. Boom. Okay, so let's undo that. Undo, 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 undo. So what I want to do is say that I have, so to get this in the right order, I'm going to redo so I have the A one. To redo it in the right order, I want to do all of the ones that are just one letter first. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then I'll go back and I'll do the A, B, C, D, and I think that will be in the correct order. Let's try it. So I've undone, so now I only have one conditional formatting. If I manage the rules, there's that one. So now I'm gonna copy this one, and I'm gonna skip that one for a second. Home tab, style, drop down, and contains the B, drop down, custom, more colors, custom, hex, paste, okay, okay, okay. And then the C is gonna be green. Copy, select this whole thing, home tab, style, drop down, conditional formatting, contains a C, and then drop down, custom, more colors, custom, boom, okay, okay, okay. Not the CD, but this time the D, copy, select all of them, conditional formatting, contains the D, drop down, custom, more colors, custom, okay, okay, okay. Now the E, so copy that, select the whole thing, conditional formatting contains the E, drop down, custom, more, custom, hex, paste, okay, okay, okay. Then the F, copy, select the whole thing, drop down, contains the F, drop down, custom, more colors, custom, hex paste, okay, okay, okay. Almost there. We're on the G now. Copy, select the whole thing, custom, contains the G, drop down, custom, more, custom, hex paste, okay, 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 okay. So now I'm going to go back and add the ones in between. The A, B, there's only 5 of them. So let's go back and add the orange on AB, select the whole thing, drop down, see if it does what we think it should. We're going to select that one and then drop down, custom, boom, boom, hex, bam, bam, bam. Okay, so that looks right. So now the red has disappeared and that's orange. Okay, so let's do the same. Now let's do this one. The CD, C sharp, D flat, copy, select the whole thing, drop down, contains the CD, I think it was, drop down, custom, more colors, boom, hex, paste, bam, bam, bam. So those are different greens. So these 3 greens are different. I think that's right. Now let's go to the DE, D sharp, E flat. Take that, select the whole thing, conditional formatting, contains D sharp, E flat, DE, drop down, custom, more colors, custom, boom, okay, okay, okay. So that's good. These are 3 different blues. Now the FG, copying the purple, selecting the whole thing, drop down, contains the FG, drop down, custom, more colors, boom, okay, okay, okay. So that looks good. And finally, the GA, G sharp, A flat. Select the whole thing, drop down, tech contains G sharp, A flat, drop down, custom, more colors, custom, paste hex, okay, okay, okay. All right, let's see if we can verify this now. If I copy that, if I say this is, if I have like a 1 and then this is going to be equal this plus 1, and I copy this down like to here, and then I have like, and then this is just going to equal the letter, right? And I'll copy this down here just for a test, and then I put those together. It's going to be this, and then an and. I'm just testing it, and this, and then I copy that down. So now I've added a letter to it, and see if I just grab one of these conditional formattings, do I get the same color if I grab that and I go zoom? See, so now the color's being applied, even though I have something else to it. So I think it's going to work, except this should be a G. I didn't have the G. One more. If I pull this whole thing down, boom, there's the last one. All right, and then if I want to take the conditional formatting off, boom. Now this is a little bit more difficult to do in Excel than like a database program where you could just toggle it on and off. But you could see it's not too bad. Once I have it laid out, all of these cells have all 12, meaning manage rules, all 12. If I need to change the order of the rules so that it's in order, like the order that we have it in is all of the ones that have 1 letter in it, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, is first, and then therefore the ones that have 2 letters, A, B, C, D, D, F, F, G, are after it. Therefore, if there's 2 letters in it, it's going to override the 1-letter rule based on the ordering. But I could go into any of these and change, the formatting if I need to. So now I can fairly easily toggle on and off once I start having cells, so I can play with the colors, and then I might have multiple color systems, as we will have once we do the example tab over here for just the relative positions, so that I can toggle on 2 different color systems. And if you wanted to get really crazy, then of course you could apply octaves, which might be applied by having the brightness changed. So that would mean that I could use a standard color system here, or one that's really going to be nuanced because it's going to take into account brightness in it. But we'll approach brightness a different way in a future presentation at some point. Hopefully, that's way in the future. But so I'll delete that out. So there's our color system.